From Covington being ranked second in the division after being absent for a whole year, to Leon Edwards hoping to take on the winner of the Masvidal versus Burns fight, here's everything to know about why Rocky's so scared of a bout with Covington. Let me just start by pointing out why Rocky deserves a great opponent. At the mega event that was the UFC 286, everyone saw how Leon Edwards grabbed that belt as the welterweight champion. But things aren't as simple as that in the world of mixed martial arts. No, the fighters have to prove their worth over and over again, and a big part of that means defending the titles they win. So, of course, it's definitely not the end of the road for Rocky yet, because after his grand victory against Kamaru Usman back in March, the man has to prepare himself for the ultimate fight, defending his recently won welterweight title. With such a brilliant win under his belt, no pun intended, you would expect that the UFC would pair up Rocky with a fighter worth fighting for his next bout. But nope, as much as Edwards wants a worthy opponent, it looks like he's all lucked out, because it's very likely he'll have no option but to go up against Colby Covington of all people. What's the deal with Covington anyway? Here's the thing, folks. Ever since Covington had the luxury of defeating Jorge Masvidal last year in March, he hasn't had any fights. On top of that, he's nursing a career record of 17-3. That doesn't sound too bad, but let me tell you what really matters. In his most recent fight, and if you take a look at the last 4 fights in his record, you'll find out that poor Chaos only won 2 of them. And the 2 losses that he suffered, oh boy, were they awful. Why? Well, because both defeats came at the hands of none other than Kamaru Usman, aka the same man that Rocky defeated last month. Makes you think, yeah? That's how unfair it seems to pair up possibly one of the best men in the welterweight division right now with someone who hasn't played in over a year. What's more, he also suffered defeat by the same opponent that Rocky recently won against. Such a shame, really. And that's why Edwards seems so pressed about it. Rocky has straight up refused to engage in a bout against Chaos. In other words, without even fighting Rocky, Chaos has wreaked plenty of chaos in Rocky's life. There's a lot of pressure on Edwards now. Just imagine all the strain that UFC is putting on him. And when I say UFC, I actually really just mean the man behind the wheels, aka the one in control of all the strings, President Dana White. White is hell-bent on making sure that Edwards' next opponent is Colby Covington. It has everyone questioning exactly what's happening, because let me be very real. Who pairs up someone who has lost both UFC title fights he was in with someone who just won the welterweight division belt? Dana White, that's who. It makes 0 sense, I know, but oh well, that's what's happening. And if you know a thing or two about White, he definitely tries to have it his way. Like I said, Chaos hasn't been in a lot of fights in the last 2 years, and that's one of the major reasons why Rocky feels iffy about having him as his opponent. Leon Edwards even opened up about it in an episode of the MMA Hour. Rocky didn't hesitate to share his 2 cents in this episode. He was being interviewed by Ariel Helwani, and the fighter was as candid as possible. According to him, Chaos really hasn't earned his way for this fight. Usually in the UFC, the more fights you have and the more you win, that's when you get rewarded, like being moved up a rank in the list of best fighters in a particular division. But that doesn't seem to be the case here with Covington. Instead, Edwards thinks the guy's being rewarded for not fighting. Now, that's just pretty unfair, don't you think? On top of that, Rocky even talked about how back when he wasn't winning any of his bouts, they completely took him out of the rankings. Talk about a biased system, huh? Rocky's calling the Dana White privilege, and I've gotta say, that really is the best way to put it. In fact, right after Edwards won the welterweight title belt, White immediately put out a press conference, and guess what he focused on at this conference? That Covington being paired up against Edwards is the logical thing to do right now, and it makes perfect sense. Not for everyone, especially not Rocky. Just take a look at Rocky's career if you need some convincing. That man's managed to maintain a pretty stellar record if you ask me. Leon Edwards has won a total of 21 fights in his career, but that's not the good part, folks. The good part is how he's managed to have an unblemished record since 2016. This man has not lost one fight since then. That's a pretty brilliant record to maintain, and when you look at it, you're compelled to admit this man deserves all the trophies in the world. There's just no other way of putting it. Since 2016, Rocky's been a part of 10 fights, and he's won all of them. So indeed, for this man, it's been a long road. And boy, it wasn't all easy. I'm not sure if you remember how he was removed from the welterweight rankings due to the pandemic. He couldn't travel due to restrictions, and it bore a significant impact on his career. Yet, here he is now, persevering despite it all. And that's why Edwards has his eyes on who's going to be the champ of the Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Burns fight at UFC 287. The fight's going to go live on the 8th of April, and you best believe Rocky is going to watch it with full focus. And whoever wins that fight, well, it's highly possible Edwards would want to fight that person next.
It's amazing, you know. It's like every kid's dream to be able to live this moment out, and I said it all week, I truly believe that this is my era, you know. It's been a long time, I haven't lost a fight.
But with how the UFC works, doesn't look like things will go in Rocky's favor. In fact, there's been news about Rocky being stripped of his title win. And who else said it but Colby Covington? I know it sounds pretty cruel, but that's what Chaos recently mentioned when he appeared for an interview at Submission Radio. According to Covington, Rocky has no choice but to fight him. So it looks like a dead-end street, it seems. If you've been following the welterweight rankings, then you know Chaos is currently standing at number 2 on the list. You know what that means? In the case that UFC decides to take the title away from Edwards, it's going to be handed over to Covington. In other words, it's an unfair situation through and through. But you know what's really unbelievable? It's the fact that Dana White personally reached out to Colby. To do what exactly? Well, to reassure him he's fighting against Leon Edwards this summer no matter what. Damn. Talk about him pulling all the strings, huh? And then Covington even tried to provoke poor Rocky. He talked about how Edwards has been desperate to fight Masvidal, and that there's no need for him to worry, because once Covington defeats him in the summer, Edwards can go and face off against Masvidal at the prelims. Man, talk about someone being too full of himself. There's nothing to do but wait and watch. On the other hand, Edwards does have a condition. Rocky believes that all Covington really needs is one more fight. Yep, you heard that right. For now, it feels nonsensical to give Chaos a chance when he's been sitting out on fights for a whole year. Edwards thinks that what Covington really needs to do is go out there and fight one of the top fighters. Only then can he prove that he's worth a title defense bout. Covington's done nothing in that 1 year, and maybe if he can show he can beat the top fighters in the game, then maybe it's not all just talk. That's a wrap on why Rocky is hesitant about fighting Chaos.